ACLU. I'm also the son of Iranian immigrants to this country, so what's happening is both personal and professional to me. But what I'd like to do is explain, there's a lot of confusion. This all came very quickly, and there's been confusion. I'd like to do my best to explain as best I can what the executive order, particularly I'll speak about the so-called Muslim ban executive order, although there are other executive orders out there that you should learn about, and what's happened since, so we can understand them, so we can learn how we can move forward together. First, what is an executive order? What is this thing? It's a proclamation by the executive branch that has the force of law, but there's a couple things an executive order cannot do, and they're important. They cannot override the Constitution of the United States, and they cannot override the laws of Congress. So as long as they don't conflict with those two things, they have the force of law. We'll talk about this executive order and whether the ACLU and other organizations believes that it conflicts with law and the Constitution. So what does this particular executive order purport to do? First, it bans the entry into the United States. By its words, it bans the entry into the United States of nationals from 7 listed countries. I can list them, but I think at this point everyone knows what they are. It does that for a period of 90 days. And during that 90 days, it's not like it's going to come back and just be the way it was. During that 90 days, the government is to evaluate its screening procedures and come back with a set of recommendations for additional materials it needs before it processes someone into the country. You can bet this is going to be some form of the extreme vetting that we have been hearing about as the candidate was campaigning. So there will be heightened requirements. So when you hear talk of, oh, after 90 days, don't worry. After 90 days, it's not going back to the way it was. So after 90 days, the executive order does leave open the possibility of other countries being added. It leaves open the possibility of other requirements being met. So this is a very serious matter. The ban, by its words, forbids the entry of even people on student visas, temporary visas, work visas, and lawful permanent residents. That's what it says. It says immigrant visas. That's the equivalent of a lawful permanent resident. Now, I'll talk about all the litigation that got sparked by this, and in part due to that, the administration has now said lawful permanent residents will not be affected by this executive order. So people with green cards from the 7 countries should be, so long as they're otherwise in status, allowed to come into the country. So it's an important thing to understand. Still affected certainly are people on other kinds of visas. The other thing that it did, the other major thing that it's done, is it's halted entirely our refugee program, okay, for 120 days, while similar sort of investigation by the department is being done, and they can figure out what other enhanced screening procedures we should do. A couple things about that. We have already done, as I'm sure if you're here you might have an understanding, we already do extremely thorough background checks of people coming into this country. Refugees, so you don't understand, are people who have fled their country. They've been identified as by the United Nations as people who have suffered persecution or have a well-founded fear of suffering persecution in their home country. The United Nations identifies them, and then they work with various nations around the world to accept them in, give them visas, and accept them into their countries and put them in a safe environment. The United States has done this for a very long time. It's a core piece of American values, and we've now put a halt on it for 120 days. We've put an indefinite halt on it for Syrian refugees. So if you're from Syria, the halt is indefinite. It could go on. After 120 days, these heightened requirements will be put in place. Now, about both of these temporary bans, when the heightened requirements are put in place, if countries cannot meet those heightened requirements, provide sufficient background information, people are not coming in. That's just not going to happen. So think for a moment about the country of Somalia that has faced so much strife and difficult times, where there's a functioning government has not been in place for a very long time. That kind of background material is going to be difficult to come by for nationals of countries like that. So we're very concerned. It also, when it comes back, is going to limit our refugee acceptances to 50,000. That is less than half of what we used to accept. So it's a very small proportion of our country. 50,000 is very small compared to what we've historically accepted in this country. And when it comes back into effect, according to the executive order, priority will be given to, quote, minority religions. We'll come back to that in a moment. And then the executive order has also told the Department of Homeland Security to heighten the screening standards of all entrants into the country to look for fraudulent claims. So that's what the executive order has done. And why is it problematic? Why are people outraged? Well, certainly there's something about American values that I think many of us feel it does not represent. That's certainly it. For the ACLU, it also represents significant legal problems. The Constitution forbids the government from favoring or disfavoring any religion or religion, period. That's just what's built into our Constitution. We've always lived that way. And so to say we're going to favor minority religions over non-minority religions is problematic. And really it portrays an understanding of what it means, what religion means, that doesn't grasp that concept. Is a Shiite in a Sunni country a minority religion? Is a Shiite in a Sunni country a minority religion? What does that mean? All this remains to be seen. So there's a constitutional problem. Now, a lot of what's been said about it is the word Muslim's not in the executive order. Well, this is true. It happens to be 7 predominantly Muslim countries. Okay, you don't have to discriminate against all Muslims to discriminate against Muslims. It's discrimination against these 7 predominantly Muslim countries. And it's also, through the words of the administration, a transparent pretext for what they're trying to do. Throughout the campaign, we know what he said. Okay? But it's what he said since that really reveals his true intent. Rudy Giuliani has said in public on the radio, what the president did was he came to me and he said, I want to enforce the Muslim ban. Show me how to do it legally. Well, how to do it legally is not to mention religion. So he has said that. President Trump has said on a radio show, yes, it's my intention to favor Christianity when I say minority religion. That has been something they've said publicly. So these public statements reveal the true intent of this. And it's that true intent that a lot of the litigation that I'll talk about has been based on. There's a fundamental core principle in our Constitution called due process. When you have a liberty interest in something, when you have liberty, when you have property, the government can't take it away without giving you some sort of process. And so there are due process problems with just universally revoking and not giving anyone an opportunity to argue why they should be allowed in the country. So there's problems there. There's also a problem in that it conflicts with what Congress has said. The Immigration and Nationality Act, our laws say you cannot discriminate by nation, not just religion, yes religion, but also by nation, and it transparently does that. So these are all the legal problems with the executive orders. What does it mean at this point? Well, at this point it means it really affects people who are outside the country the most, who had at one point visas to come into this country. It's been reported that about 60,000 to 100,000, there's disputes about the number of visas have been just universally revoked with the swipe of a pen. So there's a lot of people that were coming to this country that no longer can. It certainly affects people who are in this country lawfully who would like to go home and visit family and come back under their valid visas. The executive order doesn't order the deportation of anybody, and it couldn't just order the deportation of someone on a valid visa. But someone on a valid visa who leaves is going to have a significantly hard time coming back if they're from one of these 7 countries. So that creates a problem. If your mother is sick, we've been fielding calls all week. If people whose mothers are sick in Iran, brother is getting treatment in Iraq, I need to go see them, what should I do? Under the executive order as it stands, I wouldn't recommend to anybody travel out because we're not sure if we're going to get you back. So what happened as a result of the executive orders? Well, in the immediate aftermath, it was done on 4:45 on a Friday, and by Saturday, people that were in transit were landing at airports and not being allowed into the country. What was overwhelming was the response that people came out and said, we support these individuals. And over the next few days, lawsuits have, I think we're up to more than a dozen lawsuits challenging this. The state of Washington has challenged it. Today, I think the state of Hawaii challenged it, arguing that Muslims can't visit like friends on other islands within the same state because they'd have to encounter federal officials. So litigation is everywhere. And what does that mean? Well, where does it stand now, according to this litigation? We filed yesterday the ACLU of California lawsuit on behalf of people from those 7 countries who are on lawful status here that would like to travel, as well as those that are stranded abroad. Those who went to their airplanes or have flights, went to their airplanes and were turned away, or had flights scheduled and don't know whether they'll ever be able to come back. And so we filed a lawsuit today on that. Filing a lawsuit is one thing, winning a lawsuit is another. So we filed that. You've heard a lot about orders. I want to be clear. We have won a few early victories, temporary stays of the order. Some places the court has said we're going to temporarily forbid the government from sending people back home. Some of them say we're going to temporarily prevent the government from detaining you for too long at the airport. Some of them have said, the one at Dulles Airport says we're going to allow lawyers into the interrogation rooms. So there's a lot of different orders, and they're all moving forward. These are temporary orders. What the court found is because the law moves slowly, you can file these emergency motions, and the courts have essentially said, we think you have a good argument here, and in the meantime, the stakes are so high, we're going to not let this take effect until you can argue it further. So we've made some nice first steps by winning some of these orders, but it's hardly a slam dunk, and we'll see what happens as this process moves forward. It certainly bears monitoring. There is a piece of the Immigration Nationality Act that arguably gives the president the authority to revoke visas in times of national security. And what this is eventually going to come down to, I would suspect, is the Supreme Court deciding what is the balance. So that's where we stand now. Things are very much in flux. Things change every day. Every day I get new information about what's happening and what's not. What we know now, for those of you who have friends that are affected by this, if you are a lawful permanent resident, you're unaffected. Lawful permanent resident applications will still be adjudicated. Applications, if you're a refugee and you're applying to get your family here, those, they say, are still going to be adjudicated. Even the administration says that. All other visas from these home countries are not. So that's where we stand right now. What can you do? I think a lot of people are going to talk about that. I suspect that's why a lot of people are here. Certainly, the state of California is doing what it can. There's legislation called SB 31 that's designed to prevent the sharing of information based on religion with the federal government. That's working its way through the state. There's SB 54, which is designed to prevent the sharing of private information of all immigrants with the federal government besides those required by law. So there's things that the state is doing, but we're very much living in a time that where there's going to be a lot more questions than answers for a little while, and we're certainly on our way to getting some of those answers. But what's been really overwhelmingly, what's made me feel good in my heart is the outpouring of support, the protests that have materialized saying this is not what America stands for to me. And those kinds of things do have an effect. You have an effect when you're visible, when you're calling people in your government and telling them how you feel. So I want to thank everyone for that. Certainly I'll be around to take questions. The ACLU has a bunch of materials about what your rights are when you're encountered by law enforcement. On our website we have information about what your rights are when you come to the border, when you come to the airport. In San Diego, we don't have a lot of direct flights from these 7 countries landing, as I understand it. But we certainly have people in this community that go across the land border and come back. And so that's something that we're monitoring very closely. We want to see how that's implemented. So while we've won some significant early victories, we continue to push this forward, and we're hoping for victory in the long run. So Thank you very much. I think there will be time for questions after, but
Yeah.
at the moment.